This is Sweets. Which side is he on? This side. I am Sid, and today we're going to review last quarter, uh, where we started, where we ended, what our goals were, did we hit them, what we learned, and then talk about next quarter and what our goals are. Are we going to hit them? What do we need to do? I'm really excited to dive into this, especially coming off of that call that we just had with Steph, which was great. Steph, if you're watching, you're great. So I put it together a little agenda, but it's a fluid agenda. So feel free to jump in at any time. Do you want me to pull this up and start there?
Let's do it.
All right. Let me open Slack. And here is the agenda. Let's start by opening the admin dashboard and pulling up 3 months and seeing where we're at. So our goal over the last quarter two was increase retention. Looking back and thinking on that, the one thing we didn't add was like an actual number to validate what success looks like for that metric. So we can kind of laxly say, I think we achieved the goal, or at least I did. I feel like we did. Where if you see, we started off with average active users weekly was 2.
Probably you and me.
Yeah. No, this does not count.
Right. In addition to us.
Yeah. This does not count our email. This is actually the list. I have it right here. These are all of the emails excluded from any of this.
Nice. Big team.
Yeah. Or testing. So let me pull back up 3 months. So you can see we started off with 2 active users and ended. Look at us ending the week with another high. Wait, 27. Yeah, with a high.
Mm-hmm.
With tied our high.
It's a 10x.
But it's also only
it's only 15x.
It's only Thursday too, so we have a couple days. So we'll probably end the quarter at our highest active users per week.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah, so I don't know why this is not loading up with the correct data. Let me see. This should. So again, active users currently are. Why does it say 28? That doesn't make sense. Oh, there we go. 72. It just took a second. So yeah, we're up 324% from the last quarter.
Can you zoom it out to a year? Can you go last 12 months just for us to get the full?
I can, although keep in mind that this started in February, which I think is a good thing because we didn't count like the January craziness.
Yeah, so definitely looks like a big uptick on the global.
I think we're doing good. What was it? March, April, May.
Yep, March, April, May, June. January, February, March is Q1. April, May, June was this quarter. So April, May, and June.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, June showing there, but
so,
yeah, probably because it hasn't finished, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. But I think we did good. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk through is admin dashboard. Where are we tracking 3 months ago? Another thing that I want to talk about is what were we tracking 3 months ago when we first started? And we were tracking number of messages sent, which has changed over the last 3 months to getting a lot more granular with how we're tracking, why we're tracking, who we're tracking, how we're tracking. So I think, in the last 3 months, I've also had a learning experience of like, how do we track better metrics and what matters to track. So those were my look back, where we started versus where we're at. What changed? What did we learn? Sweets, what's one thing that you learned over the last quarter based on where we started and where we are now.
Anthropic's rate limit does not scale well with a team building a product that is trying to scale.
That's a good. That's good.
What's something that you've learned that you didn't know before this quarter started?
All users are not created equal. I think that's the biggest one. And actually, I think my biggest learn is the importance of separating signal from noise. And going into next quarter, I think that's what I want to like.
Okay, Google, what time is it?
It's 4:13 p.m.
Did I freeze or did Sid freeze?
I don't know, but I found these results on search.
I'm not talking to you, Googs. One of us is frozen. The only question is it me or is it Sid? I'm gonna run a speed test. Does seem a little slow on my side. I'm gonna try to close all my code editors. Oh, Sid's back. Trying to add him to the stream.
We got kicked off. I don't know what happened.
Was it your side or my side?
No, I had to reset. I got like frozen and then I reset. Where did I leave off?
You said something about signal versus noise. You want
Yeah,
to be able to
that was my biggest takeaway. Is just separating signal from noise. Lots of noise. Yeah, just like we have so many users that are coming in or that we could hit up and etc. Like, so it's just like getting very concrete about like, okay, who should we take meetings with? Who should we take feedback requests from? Who are we building for? There's so much opportunity and things to do. So really getting clarity around requirements to be considered for attention.
Last quarter, we didn't have enough people, so anybody that was using it, we wanted to talk to. Now we have enough people that if we wanted to talk to everybody, it would take up our entire week. And so now you can't just say yes to everybody. You now have to increase your bar of what is sufficiently effective or important to get into your calendar.
Exactly. Yeah, and ship and listen to feedback, etc. All of that. My question to you was, what are the 3 to 4 things that you feel like you shipped last quarter that added to the retention, hitting the retention goals?
Telegram reporting of new conversations and errors. Telegram did not exist in Q1. That's in your Q2. Moving away from a monolithic scrape and focusing on smaller and more modular tools. Last quarter, I think it's probably been in my hands. Quarter's a long time. The most recent, I have a recency bias. So like scheduled actions, YouTube, new UI components from Veerball. 3 or 4 is hard. I mean, I just start to list. in your opinion, what was the single most important thing that was shipped this quarter that has helped us to achieve our goals? If we only did, looking back, if we'd only done one single thing and you could attribute it to making the most progress towards the goals that we set at the start of the quarter, what do you think the single thing is that had the biggest impact on us achieving our goals?
Tracking.
What gets tracked gets managed and improved. I think
Yep.
that's Charles Munger.
It's really good.
If you focus
And then
on
it
it,
just-
it improves. So it's very
Yeah.
important for us to know what's the metric, because I've written down here number of first-time chats, number of new chats from existing humans, and I don't think either of those are on the dashboard. Number of first-time
Anymore.
chats, definitely not. Number of new chats from existing humans, you are tracking that in your table below for a human. Number of messages or number of chats, you're tracking one of those. We started to get clarity as we built, and you building your dashboard was helpful for us to track the thing. I agree with you that coming up with quantifiable metric, focusing on one single metric that is most important will help us to focus on it every single week and get closer to it. So this point at the close of a quarter and the start of a new one, both of us are aligned that we probably didn't define that metric with high enough resolution. So what is the metric that we want to be tracking this next quarter if we only focus on one? That once we get into the plan side, that I think is the question. What is the single metric that we want to be tracking to measure Q3 growth? But we're still on your first point of reviewing the quarter, so I don't want to rush through it. Reviewing the quarter, what else do you want to talk through on reviewing the quarter that we just finished with Q2?
The only other thing I wanted to talk about, but this is only if you want to go down this route. We can move on to like the next quarter. But the other thing that we could touch on if you want to is your team and what you have been battling with, which is, do I take more time to be empathetic or patient and teach my team, or do I just take more time to ship the way I want to ship and not build a team? So what are your thoughts, or what are your learnings from last quarter? What are you taking into next quarter?
Last quarter, we did not have it's been a question. The biggest question on my mind right now as a dev and manager of a team is what is the most effective way to scale the dev work that we are doing? Is it hiring more devs and investing in humans? Or is it investing my own attention in AI tools and my relationship with AI tools? And it could be a mix of both, but those feel like the polarities that I'm working down. My standard for what is acceptable continues to get higher the more I use these tools. And I realize 90% of devs that are graduating with comp sci degrees or actively or full-time employed aren't using these tools. And a lot of them hate these tools because it challenges the ego and the identity that they've been building for their entire career. And so there's a lot of work. There can be a lot of work for me going out and trying to get people, of anybody that is not already in the mindset of I need to lean on these tools and ride the wave of it. Because then I get someone like Faisal, who I bring in. He worked with me on Moishi's project, which was before we were using Cursor, when I needed devs to scale my time because AI tools were not at a point to be able to do it. He left for a few months because he wasn't shipping at the quality or at the quantity that I needed. He came back to me and he said, I no longer have a full-time job. When he ended up getting angry at me, he exposed he does have a full-time job. So found out that his words weren't correct. And when I started to compare his output against an AI, he got very angry at me and then told me he never wants to work with me again. So it's a cycle that I run into, and it on a very personal level. I relate this to my father. My father was always in construction, and when he built out his teams, I remember hearing the people that he worked with hated him. They hated how my father would have this is how things need to get done in building a house or in repairing drywall or in installing plumbing. And if people didn't do it right, he would go in and say, take it out, do it the right way. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And everybody else would say, your dad's a hard ass. Your dad doesn't have empathy. Your dad yells and gets angry. And so when I see someone like Faisal reply to me and say, my mental peace is not worth the small amount of money that you're paying me. I never want to work with you again. I come back and like, am I recreating the errors of my father, and am I not doing well enough? But at the same time, the devs that want to be here are here. Like Veerball's here, Jad came back, and so
Is Jad back?
Jad's not back. Jad's not back, but Jad stayed with us for a long time. Veerball's with us right now. And I'm feeling very comfortable with where we're at. Now that we have background agents, a new thing that happened this week is background agents. It's faster for me to just type a task into code review, and then I get the output 4 minutes later, as opposed to Sid tells me a task, I write the task in linear, I send the task to a dev, the dev spends a whole day sending me feedback in order to understand the task. A day later, the dev ships the task. And a week has gone by between we have an idea and there's a pull request up that I had to spend a whole bunch of hours writing the task, communicating the task, answering the question. And so I'm leaning more and more into focus on just me doing the task, and we prioritize the tasks. Because there's also bringing in new devs. I feel like we start to be like, oh, what tasks do we give this person? And if we have 3 devs, we have to start imagining things that we want them to do, and they're not necessarily high priority. And so you and I are spending time imagining things that don't necessarily press the needle forward. It's a nice to have, but not necessarily the most important thing. Because those tasks now exist, someone has to review that code. Someone has to write the linear tickets for that code. And so now I have to spend time reviewing tasks that aren't necessarily the most important thing. So I don't think there's one side or the other of just me investing in myself or just bringing on people, but I think the middle balance is hire slow, fire fast. Having a very high bar for excellence. But you've seen how big of a hard ass I can be. Like you've seen me in code reviews. Like I would love an objective or your emotional response of like, what's your perspective? How do you feel with the code reviews that I do, and how I review and communicate the code that you're shipping?
It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking me. First of all, I also appreciate you reflecting so deeply of like into your childhood on live on public stream. So you heard it here first, everyone. But I do not think that you should be more empathetic and patient with your engineers, or lower your bar, or change the perspective of like what's faster here, shipping agents and leaning on AI, or building a team. And I'm all for like setting the bar so high where like you're only really bringing in somebody like, as opposed to like a freelancer who's like just like somebody who's like helping clean up things. I think that's a different scenario. Like they're the amount they're making versus what they're doing is like, with a Veerball who's like, he may not be the greatest engineer in the world, but like he's doing something that would require way too much time for you to do, and like, isn't in your skill set. So like that's a good example of like a pro. But I think that on the flip side of it is like, you asked me how, in my experience, what could you have done, or how was my experience with your onboarding of me as a dev? While it was intimidating, I'm also reminder I'm approaching it from a different perspective, because like I know, I guess you could have been like, never ship code again, Sid, but I'm also like coming at it from like, I have a little bit more leeway and freedom than the engineers do. But I think what in my opinion, what would have mitigated the frustration for me would have been you spending more time, like spending the majority of your time on one initial call. Like when you sat down with me the other night and like walked me through stuff, that I felt special, I felt heard, I felt validated, I felt like, oh, you're on my team. Whereas like when we onboarded Verbal, I don't think you ever sat down with him and like got on a call and like walked with him. So what I do think is like, if you are onboarding somebody, I think reflecting on, do I want to spend an hour getting to know this person and setting the standards of, I'm a human, I'm here to help you, I'm on your team, but here's what I need from you. And here's how I am going to be as a human, face to face on a call for an hour will save you 30 minutes for the next 6 weeks arguing with them on Slack. Other than that, I don't think you should change anything. So it's like being a little bit more human up front during onboarding to remind them, hey man, I'm here for you. I want you, but I have high standards. It's gonna, like, I watched a TikTok the other day of like the Airbnb CEO guy who was saying like one of the interview questions, he's at the end of the interview, he says, he doesn't try to sell anybody. He says like, okay, so by the way, this is going to be really hard, long hours, and you're like not gonna like get any time. Like he scares the shit out of them, and then is like, if they still want to work after that, like you have a winner. And you know, so it's almost like humanly relating. Like, listen, man, this is probably going to be the hardest dev work you've ever done. If you're up for that task, I'm really excited for you to be here. But if you're not, then this probably isn't going to work out. So that when they start to get pissy, like you've already forewarned them that this shit is hard. Like, you know, but other than that, I think you're doing awesome, man.
That seems to be consistent feedback is people don't feel like I spent enough time on onboarding. And I've typically had a very hard rule of, I don't spend time on calls. We should be able to communicate async, and I don't want to waste time getting on calls. I appreciate your feedback of it feels more human, and doing that call, while it might to me feel like I'm wasting time on calls, could save a bunch of iterations later on and potentially improve the experience. I like that you laid out, the goal of the call is I'm a human, spend 1 hour so that they know this is important. I'm physically here with you. And then end it. I have a very high bar for excellence. This is not going to be easy. If you don't meet these standards, you will be out the door very quickly. But making that time, answering any questions that they have, being there with my presence. I don't get a chance to hear the feedback that you've just given. So for Q3, with people that we bring in, maybe I should do this with Veerbal as well, is just be like, hey, Veerbal, do you want to, it might be too late for him. Like he's already doing it.
It's not too late. I think you should do it with Veerbal. I think that if I could go back, I also don't think you should do it immediately. Like what we did with Veerbal is like, hey man, do these tests. If you pass the tests, then you get the hour-long meeting with Suites, which is the onboarding meeting. It's not like, all right, Veerbal, go meet. Again, signal to noise, man. Yeah. If there is signal in an engineer, then he's worth meeting and building the relationship with face-to-face.
Okay. Appreciate this feedback. This is something I can take concrete actions on.
All right, let's jump into the Q3.
Pew, 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 pew. New quarter.
Pew, pew, pew. All right, new quarter, man. I'm so excited. All right, let me share my screen. Did you see the Notion or no?
Likely no.
Likely no.
If you're on the call, you and I are both getting a fresh experience of this Notion together. Let's see what Sid's cooking up.
All right, I'm cooking. Wait, let me pull it. All right, I sent this to you, but here it is. Let me pull this away. All right, I'm leaning into the OKRs this quarter.
What's OKR?
Objective and key results. So it's a framework for goal setting that Google does. A lot of companies do, but it's like made popular by Google. More importantly, it was made popular by the dude who did Gmail, who said like OKRs was how he set his goals for reaching the success of Gmail. So there's a bunch of like books and shit on OKRs or whatever, but the idea is you set an objective, which is like a broader goal that somebody can get behind, and then you set up to 4 to 5 key results, which are like the what defines success. So I will go through this one by one real quick. Again, this is a working document. The purpose of this is to not say this is what we're doing. but it is to like present to you the idea of what I'm thinking, to get feedback from you, and we can change on the fly if you disagree or challenge anything. The main thing was last quarter we focused on retention. We grew from 2 to 10. What we learned was number of messages sent did not tell the whole story. Retained user does not equal a valuable user. And what we can measure, we can improve.
Yep.
And so my thought this quarter is focusing on obviously finding product market fit is like our only objective right now. But my strategy is by turning active users into product champions. So these are like the people who can't live without Recoup. They share it constantly, and they're willing to pay, or they can get their company to pay any monthly price or a premium price because of the value that they get for it every day. So these are the examples of who we are focused on, or who we should focus on, is people that are consistently active and sharing, people who use Recoup to solve real reoccurring problems. They show an intent to make it part of their daily workflow, and they are in a position to pay a premium or influence real revenue, like they have an audience or something like that. Those are like kind of like me thinking through, like, out of all of the calls that I took, if I could get rid of 80% of them, who are the people that I like, what are the prerequisites that I like definitely don't want to lose out of a call from a user, and those were them. Some of the unintentional, or the things that we should intentionally avoid, in my opinion, are users who are not willing to pay a premium to solve meaningful recurring problems. Talkers who sound valuable on calls but don't follow through with actions. Had a lot of meetings like that. Or users at companies with potential, but the users aren't engaged. So it's like a black flag who, like, you know, it's promising on call one, but like it's just obvious that they're not using the product, and I have to like pull teeth to get them to. And so my thought is like Q3 is about strengthening our practice of separating signal from noise by asking the right users the right questions, tracking the right metrics, and converting all of that into clarity and for a product roadmap to find product market fit. That is my pitch on the objective for Q3. How do you feel?
Last quarter was retention. This quarter is product market fit.
Yes.
Product market fit written down for quantifiable numbers so we can be tracking. I've written down increased revenue. Have you stated any other quantifiables? Increased revenue we can be tracking inside of Stripe.
I have the key results is where I put the hard metrics.
So it'll be lower
So
down.
objective is the holistic. What can we rally behind? Key results is here's what measures. Here's how we know if we've hit success. So I'll get down there.
Sounds good. Yeah.
The first thing I want to. Okay, perfect. The first thing I want to do before we go into the key results is to define the funnel that we're optimizing for. So just walking through, a new user is somebody who learns about Recoup, signs up, and sends a message. So we're not optimizing for adding new users. We're optimizing like for the funnel of once somebody sends a message, or creates a new artist, you know, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
They just started, and I think like the simplest way to track, the simplest signal to track on this is tracking their query to make sure they're not blocked by the product to move down this funnel. So like if a new user comes in and signs up, if they hit errors, bugs, any waiting, confusion, frustration, like that's going to stop them from becoming what we're looking for, which is like willing to pay a premium customer, product market fit user. Next thing is a survey user. This is somebody who's a survey user is somebody who we can send a product market fit questionnaire to. They are defined by they've sent at least 2 messages, one within the last 2 weeks. So it means they're active and they have enough understanding and memory of the product to give us high signal feedback. And the feedback we would get from them is if we send them a question of a survey asking, would they be highly disappointed if they couldn't use Recoup? Is their answer yes, no, or like what's the sliding scale of that? This will just allow us to just track product market fit. If 40% of users that we send the survey to say they would be disappointed, in theory, we can count that as product market fit. So that's kind of where we're shooting for. And what we need to do first before we can send the survey is hit at least 40 people, or I think 45 people to send the survey to. That's like the minimum requirements to get like actual valuable data off of the survey. So the next thing, so you turn a user to a survey user.
2 questions there.
Go ahead.
Why did you choose messages over instead of something else like conversations for 2 messages?
Messages are the easiest thing to do on the platform. I'm not opposed to changing that to actions like messages sent or tools used, or but like some kind of usage, communicative uses. I just have messages because that's what I have currently set up. But
copy. Other questions? Have you sent this survey before, or is this you planning out something that will be the first time you do in Q3?
First time we do in Q3.
That's it. We can keep going.
Cool.
Thank you.
Next on the funnel is the power user. This is anybody who answers yes to product market fit survey and or uses Recoup 5 out of 7 days per week. I set these 5 out of 7 days per week arbitrarily. This number can be changed. It was just me being like, what would be awesome and what would prove that it's a part of somebody's workflow is if they use it every workday, or at least sometime in the work. So,
and does that include them having a scheduled action that's set up on a daily basis?
Yes.
Cool.
Although we can't track that currently. We can, but I haven't set it up yet. So
it should hopefully already be included in your tracking, because when the scheduled action runs, it throws in the user ID and the artist ID. So it should be showing up in your board, but I agree that would be a good thing to verify that it's showing up in your board.
Cool. The next thing is a product champion. So this is somebody who actively promotes Recoup, gives proactive feedback, shares it with others, embeds Recoup into their team or public workflow. They earn social currency when recommending Recoup to their network. When we think about like, when you talk about earlier, like with Cursor, your life pre-Cursor and post-Cursor. And for me, I would consider myself a product champion of Cursor.
You are.
Because like I took the risk of like risking my social currency with you to be like, sweets, I'm not an engineer, but you need to use this fucking tool.
Yep.
And I added valuable social currency when you were like, holy shit, Sid, this thing changed my life.
Agreed,
and
100%.
so like if we can get more product champions that feel like, I feel like we're on the cusp with Steph, we're on the cusp with Sam, like people who are like actively like wanting to promote the product themselves because of the value they're getting or they know their team can get, we're in like a really, really good place. And then from the product,
I'm thinking of Steph.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I agree with you that Steph is, when you're describing that, Steph is the first person that came to my mind.
Yep. And then so the next layer of the funnel is willing to pay a premium, a customer who's willing to pay a premium. So this is like somebody who pays meaningfully or drives revenue through influence by converting usage into business value. So it's like the product champion who like champions it so much that like they will go to their company or their audience and be like, you guys need to use this tool. And it like that conversion converts in our version to like to business value, to revenue. And then that's like the funnel that I think like if we can optimize for this funnel and only pay attention to signal and then set clear metrics going into Q3 of like what does successful optimization look like? I'm going to be good. I'm going to be super excited.
Which
Any
of these
questions?
items in the list that you just shared are you currently unable to track? Which of these are you currently unable to track? Which one of those points is lacking data for you to be able to measure clearly on a weekly, daily, or monthly basis the number of each of those buckets?
The data, none of them are okay, wait, let me rephrase this. Me and you on this call, which is later down on my agenda, need to just clearly define what these are. Once we define what these are and agree
right?
quantifiably, like a power user is like we put Recoup uses Recoup 5 to 7 days out of the week. Are we in agreement on that? If so, check, and then now we can track it and we have that data.
Mm-hmm.
I can track from like the amount of calls that are being sent. I'm doing it manually now, but like, Steph is a product champion because she's introduced us to other X amount of people, So I think we can pretty much define all of these people. The only one that we need to think through is, like you said, like, does this need to be messages or should this be just actions in general on platform, or like actions that generate an LLM call?
Mm-hmm.
Something, yeah.
Now, when you say paying a premium, is that just non-zero, not paying or paying, or does premium mean like they're not just subscribed at $20 a month, they're at some level higher than that?
They're not just subscribed at $20 a month.
Copy.
Well,
so
actually,
subscribers are not going to fall into that. Premium means at something above our most basic paid tier.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I can go into what my thoughts around this. Again, I could be wrong, and we can challenge it. But I'll go into that later. Let's get into the key results real quick. Am I good to move forward?
Good. Keep going.
Awesome. All right, cool. So I set up 4 key results, and what I'm going to do in this section is walk through each key result. The questions that I have for you is, are the numbers right? Is anything off or missing, or we should rethink? Should any of these key results be replaced or reprioritized? Should each key result have a clear owner? Should me or you own any of these? And then I want to get a little bit more into like this key result 4 if we keep it, but those are my main questions. So I'll start with number 1, which is key result 1 is growing product market fit survey ready users from 15, which we have now, to 45. And the reason why I want to hit 45 is because that will allow us to send the survey. So that was my thought, is let's just get people to a place where they we can send this survey. If we go to where's the dashboard? Let me see. Conversations. Can you see this?
Yep.
Sweet. So right now, okay, we're at 16, not 15. But again, this is down from last week. I'm sorry. This is not attributed to the time period because it's only attributed to the last 14 days. So, so it's down 16% from the following or the previous 14 days. We had, I think at one point we had like 21 or 22 people, which just means that some users who may have sent a message have not done it in the last 2 weeks. So we're not like actually retaining them. So just like increasing the amount of time that like users are actually like coming back to the product at least 2 weeks so that we can send it. The next KR is create 10 power users. I put weekly power users, and that's from 0 today. We did have 1 power user last week, which was Sam, but he now fell off and had stopped using the product. He's at like 4 days a week this week instead of 5 or something. So, and that could change. It might all fall together again on Friday when like he like completes the work week. So we'll see. But again, going from 10 power users who are like the product is integrated into their workflow and they're using the shit 5 days out of 7. I set it to weekly we could set it to monthly and then just be like 70% of the month, because there's always like Steph went on vacation last week, so like she fell out of being a power user, or she would have fell out of being a power user if she was one. So just thinking through that, but that was another one of my key results. Let's get 10 power users. Third key result is close one enterprise customer with a 5K contract, a minimum of 5K contract. My thought around this is to turn one power user into a product champion who can sell Recoup, or who helps us sell Recoup into their company or audience. And it's not about revenue as much as it is to like be used as a forcing function to define like what are people willing to pay as a premium? How is our infrastructure set up to meet the need of, that kind of business model? And just basically turning the Recoup idea into like, all right, cool, this is a cool tool to like, okay, no, this is a business and we need credits and we need security and we need row level and all of that shit that comes along with, okay, we have some real revenue coming. All
Makes
right.
sense.
The last one is success metrics required for new feature tickets. So this one is I think one that I really wanted to walk through with you and get your feedback on, or more feedback than the other ones. Because right now we're shipping features before defining what the success looks like for that feature. So what I wanted to think through is, starting this quarter, every new feature on the ticket defines the clear measurable success metric defined by the engineer, or you or me, or whoever's writing the ticket up before the build. So my example of this would be like, we don't ship unless we know what we're trying to improve, why it matters, and then how we'll know if it works. The example is like, we shipped email feature. How many people have used email? How many people do we want to use email? What do we need to do to get email to work? Like all of these questions, we currently can't track if the time that you spent adding that feature improved. We can't quantifiably track that the time you spent on that feature improved retention. We can like assume, and I think we both agree that it did, but like I think in my opinion, what's missing is a definitive metric to close the chapter on the ticket, as opposed to currently, I think we ship and then we wait for users to have errors, and then we come back to them when there's an error. So I'm just trying to think through like, how do we set it up so that when you ship something, you tell me, Sid, I'm shipping this tool, and my success metric for YouTube is that 2 of our power users set up 80% of their artists with YouTube. And I need you to build that tracking system into the dashboard so that we can see the usage of the tool, if it's working, and then we can work together on figuring out, well, what needs to be done if Steph isn't setting up her YouTubes, or et cetera, et cetera. So just thinking through like, how do we work together to make it easier to track and monitor what we're building, why, and how, I guess, we're tracking it. Feedback?
Can you give me a specific example? So let's say we focus on credit pricing as a weekly build. So Sid says, hey, we want to now start charging. We want to be doing implement credits. What would be an example metric that you would like to define into that 4th bucket before we build the feature?
This is a good question. I don't know if all features, maybe we need to define what requires success metrics. And if it's hard to find out or to think about, then like it's not required for those. But my immediate thought was just like, when we're going into building a tool, thinking about what would define that there's success. So I'm just thinking with a credit system, what would define success? I mean, that's more of like is that a feature? Or is that more just like infrastructure? I wouldn't define the credit system as a feature only because it would affect, like, users are not going to have a choice on whether they use it or not, you know? But I appreciate the question because you're now challenging my thoughts on how do we define this. My initial thought was like associating this more to like features that we want users to use in order to hit our goals. So like we want Steph to use the product more, so we did YouTube, but we had no way of tracking if the build actually is effective and how we can improve the tool to be more effective. Scheduled actions is another example, but that's just something that I like. We kind of did this together the other day, where you were like, okay, Sid, in order to track scheduled actions, you just need to go and query this thing in Superbase, and then I can go and build the dashboard tool or the tracking system in the admin dashboard. So that's what I'm thinking more of, like, is as you're going into your builds, being like, okay, when I'm done with this, how do I know if it's successful? And then telling me how to build the admin dashboard to reflect your ability to understand if the tool is successful.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? It was a long-winded way of saying I don't know the answer.
Yeah. No more questions on my side.
All right, cool. Before we keep going, how do you feel about these key results?
I appreciate you. Those all sound quantifiable. They all sound quantifiable, and like we could build a dashboard around, and it's much more clear. I think these are just as clear as what we defined last quarter. How effective these are going to be determined by our ability to build a system around these numbers in week 1 or 2 that we can then iterate on for the rest of the quarter, where each week you and I are actively looking back on these numbers in the systems that we're setting. I think these numbers are good if we set up a system to track them. They are meaningless if we do the same thing as last quarter, where we said number of first-time chats. We never tracked that. Number of chats from existing humans, we more or less did, but I like that you've written out a board, and I think its efficacy is going to be determined by our implementation and constant rigorous reflection on these actual numbers, putting an actual number to it. How are we determining that number? Do we need to change the algorithm that we're using to determine that number? Where are we going to get that number? And both you and I are very clear on, these are the 5 numbers. This is where I go to see those numbers. This is how I can see where we were before. This is where I can see where we're after. And you and I can be doing that on a weekly basis. No feedback other than let's spend the first week or 2 really putting our tracking in place. That way, by the end of the quarter, we set it up at the start of the quarter, so it's very easy for us to grade the start of the quarter to the end of the quarter and our progress on it. Got it.
Awesome, cool. And then my other question, which is something that like I'm still not sure about. I'm leaning towards yes, but I want to hear your thoughts. I was thinking about assigning ownership to these KRs. I think currently we have roles and responsibilities set up in a way that's like more team or more skill based, I guess is what we would put it as. Like, you know, you're building focused, I'm customer focused. And I wanted to question if that's the correct way of going about the ownership of responsibilities, by saying like, what does it look like if I took the ownership of growing the product market fit survey ready users, and I took the ownership of closing the first enterprise customer? And what that also means is that I also take the ownership of the build of, well, what does it take to do this? That means that I would have to figure out how to get the credit system working. I would need to figure out how to get the RLS and security like any requirements I own. I can turn to you if I need help, and you could, like, we can work together. Where it's not like we're like working in parallel but not talking. Like, but from a priority standard, is like I own the OKR or the key result, instead of me being like, closing one enterprise customer, but Suites has to build out the credit system in order to do that. And so it's kind of like it's half my responsibility and half, I don't know. Like, so that's where I was going, is like, how are you feeling? Like if you were to create 10 weekly power users, and then that way, instead of relying on me to tell you what to build, you could just go look at who's the closest to power users. Okay, what do they want me to build? You can ship a YouTube tool and be like, okay, cool. How do you want me to fix this so that you use it? But like just owning more of the full outcome rather than just like the one build.
Let's do it. Put me on 2 and 4.
Fuck yeah.
I circled them on my notebook. So,
and like I said, I want to make it so that like my what I don't want to happen is like us to like feel too responsible and not be able to rely on each other. So like, for example, if you're like, Sid, I need help creating 10 weekly power users, please go get in contact with these customers because I'm too busy doing X and Y, or like, like lean on me. I'm here to help. But like vice versa, like if I'm closing an enterprise customer and I get it, and then I need to charge them with usage or whatever it is, like unless I really need your help and I can't, and I haven't figured it out how to do it myself, like I will try to ship and get to as close as I can to this KR as possible.
Sounds good.
I fuck with it, Sweets. I appreciate you just running with it.
We're at the top of the hour and I have an in-person meeting in 30 minutes that I need to change and get to. Could we try to focus on wrapping up within the next 5?
Yeah, we have just one more section.
Let's do it.
And let's wrap it up. So the first thing, or actually, no, I have 2 more sections. I forgot. So the one thing that I think we need to think through, and I don't think we need to define it today, but we can define it by the time I get back and just kind of think through it, is like, what separates a high signal user, a mid signal user, and a low signal user? And so my initial feedback is like, or thoughts on this is like, a high signal user is somebody who is actively using the project, sharing it. It's the Sams, it's the Stephs. Steph's like uses it weekly. She shares it with like 10 of her people in her company. She's giving us valuable feedback. She's not actively daily yet, but she's like strongly suggesting she's going to be. Sam Palma is another person. He's on the top of the leaderboard. He's only used it for 2 weeks, and he's already like almost at a usage rate of Paloma. And he's also shared it internally and set up 3 stakeholder meetings with me. Strong position to become a product champion. Those are the 2 off top of mind, but there's probably others. And then examples of like mid signal are like Keys, Carolyn, Eric, and they all like are mid for one reason or another. But like the idea is like, Eric, he's a user that pays $20. He's constantly on the leaderboard, but it's not easy to get feedback from him. I've tried to set up meetings multiple times and he's canceled, and he hasn't shared it in his network with anybody that I know of. So like while he's using it, he's kind of on the fence of like, could he become a potential, product champion? Yes. What's blocking him? Like, same thing with Carolyn, same thing with Judson. Like they're all kind of on the fence of like, they could go one way or another. They could become low signal quickly or high signal quickly. We have to figure out which one they fall into.
Agreed.
And then low signal is just like high noise users who can easily distract us. So like secondhand talent is a good example. I love those guys. They're really great. They use Recoup weekly. They pay for it, but there's limited upside. Like they haven't promoted Recoup. They have low influence, low spend. Like meetings are last hour and a half and they talk about nothing.
Yep.
Cool. All right, cool. So like, I think defining some of our other key users. Like, I'd love to get your thoughts on like where Paloma falls on this list and why. Where does Excelencia fall?
For Paloma.
Sorry.
Excelencia, also low signal. Both of those examples, low signal for now.
Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, just start thinking through like our user list. And then the last thing I know we're gonna
I agree with everything you put in that list and exactly where you put them.
fire. Amazing. All right, cool. And then what this will do is allow us to sort. So when you're building tools and like questioning why am I doing what, we can just always go back to like, okay, cool. Is this person a high signal power user or has the potential to be a high signal power user? If yes, then sweets, run with it, go crazy, spend your time iterating for them. If it's a mid signal, it's my job to either get them to a high signal or get them to the product market fit survey ready so like they're using it more often. Or just like, okay, cool, just like get rid of them, they're in the low signal. And then just low signal, we could just like kind of like move on. All right, so those are my initial things. And then the last thing we want to talk about, I know, fuck man, I feel like we're rushing. Give me a sec. Is going into next week or the next 2 weeks. I agree with you that the next sprint should be focused on bugs and stability. I wanted to put numbers to them. So like reducing major error volume by what percentage, improve average response time by what percentage. Although I don't know the percentages, so I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are. Oh, where are you?
We're not tracking errors right now, so it's going to be hard to get a benchmark. If we want the benchmark, we're going to need to build the feature that you have in process. Response time, we also are not currently tracking both of those things. If they are important, we need to set up tracking in order for, we need to set up tracking for them.
Okay, I have tracking set up in Superbase. I just need to track it into the onto the admin dashboard, which I will do for errors, which I will do today or tomorrow, so that going into the build, you have the tracking for the speed. Well, I don't know. Like, do you think that those are the two success metrics for the build for stability and bugs, or is there anything else that we should consider as like our benchmarks? Where are you?
Those seem, if they're able to be tracked, those seem like good ways to measure the success of the build.
Okay, so I can set up admin error tracking so that you can see where we're at and how we can track it. I need help with setting up tracking for speed. I believe you did it manually last time we did this, which was just timing it.
Sounds accurate.
Are we cool with just manually doing it and not having it in the dashboard?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, fuck it. I don't know where did you go? Can you see me?
I see you.
Oh, you're on this screen. Oh, okay, here. Now I found you. All right, awesome. All right, so we have our build for next week and the following week. Do you feel clear? I feel like we got rushed at the end to like finish up, but are we cool going into quarter 3?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, awesome. I appreciate everybody's joining in. If you haven't already, like and subscribe or share. Try Recoup and stick around with us for quarter 3 to see if we hit our goals.